Hi, I'm Kristen Yorka, and welcome to the Wild Wonder podcast, where we seek to democratize and demystify holistic wellness practices with practitioners in the field. Today, we have energy healer and spiritual teacher, Rackie. Welcome, Rackie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, Kristen.
So for those of us that don't know, I would like for you to describe what exactly energy healing is, because I know when I was first introduced to energy healing through you over 6 years ago, I had no idea, and at best, I was a skeptic. So for us lay people, what is a simple way we could begin to connect with exactly what energy healing is?
So we are all energy, and we have an energy that flows continuously all the time through us. And we can use this energy for different things, for manifesting, to give out love, to receive love. But we can also use that energy, which is divine energy, by the way, to heal ourselves and to heal others. And it works just with intention. And yeah, we do our energy healings through intention. We use the energy that flows through us to intend to heal.
Do you need to be familiar with or adhere to any kind of specific spiritual or religious background to do energy
Absolutely
healing?
not. Absolutely not. It's something that it's yours. It's who you are and what you are, and you don't need to belong to anything, and you don't need to do any kind of modality of energy healing. For example, Reiki. You don't need any kind of belief system. All you need is intention.
Okay. And if you do come from a strongly religious or spiritual background, is it as effective?
Yes, of course. It's the energy that you put into it. So if you believe it, if you, it's not wish or hope, but if you believe it, if you vibrate healing, you can do it.
Awesome. I think the first time, and you may or may not know this, but I've written about it before, that the first time we met was because your husband, now husband at the time, was one of my students, and he's now a great yoga teacher in his own right. He had invited me, and as a favor to him, I went. But full disclosure, I wasn't expecting anything because I was a complete energy healing skeptic. Like the most I did was Google, like, what is energy healing? And then I was like, I don't get it. So I thought I was just going to sit and maybe meditate for an hour, and that'd be cool. I was cool with that, and maybe meet some nice people and then go. But the actual experience blew me away. On a physical level, it blew me away. I like felt differently. And I'm not going to go too much into it because I think everybody's experience is different, but it definitely changed my perspective of energy healing. And there was something specifically, not during the first energy healing session I had with you that you said, but later on when I interviewed you for another piece, that you said that someone was draining my energy or was tied to me and taking my energy. And that immediately perked up. I'm like, yes, and how many exactly? Because I believe there's more than one. And that's when when I first heard this idea of the narcissist empath dynamic, which I think a lot of people, maybe they don't know about, but they know about it because they've kind of feel like they've lived through it. Specifically, I think it's interesting that this episode, when I went to promote it on Facebook and social media and stuff, people were sharing it, but secretly. It was like I was seeing like the behind the scenes. Don't worry, I don't know who shared it with whom, but I see it like that it was like secret shares and messages. So I think it might be a bigger thing than we really realize. So that's why I wanted to dive into this topic specifically today. I think it's something that a lot of people have gone through or are going through. And I'd like to start with me being the ex-journalist that I am. I love to start with definitions. So we have a working definition of what exactly we're talking about for those of us that don't know. This particular dynamic, I think, is difficult to define. And I think one of the reasons it's difficult to define is we don't want to put people into boxes and kind of other them, right? Like I'm good, they're bad.
Or judge them. Yeah.
Right, or judge them in any way. So I'd like to start with actually the history of the word narcissist. I think most of us know it comes from the myth of Narcissus. And I'm going to read here. It says, according to Tzetzes, he was a Laconian hunter who loved everything beautiful. Narcissus was proud in that he disdained those who loved him. I'll repeat that again because I think it's important to the conversation. He disdained those who loved him, causing some to take their own lives to prove their devotion to his striking beauty. Does that call out to you as well?
That's extremely exaggerated, but yes, it definitely defines a narcissist, but extremely exaggerated, yes.
Right. I mean, in psychology, it's bigger than life, right?
Yes.
So I wanted to, just touching on that, in the disdain of those that loved him, or there's this idea of the narcissist actually disliking the other or the person they're in relationship with, whether that's a romantic relationship or it's a work relationship or, father-daughter, mother-son, whatever. I want to know in particular how we as women, and we could talk about as men as well, but since we are women, how are we women taught this in our own cultures? Like, how are we taught this version of love? If you could speak to that.
Well, so there's the empath, and then there's women all together. Mm-hmm. We are taught to be loving, and I hate to say this, but to be servant, and then there's the aspect of religion. I know I come from a Christian background or Catholic background where you have to be good or a good Christian, or so loving, motherly, accepting, helping. So all these things set up women to fall into dangerous behavior, but definitely empathic work. And I'll tell you this later, that I hate the term empath, and I'll correct it in a second.
Right.
But it puts empath women in a lot of danger.
Right.
So especially in a relationship with a narcissist.
Yes. And I think what you're saying about the word empath, I too have issue with the word empath, especially how it's defined.
You want me to get into that?
You can. Go ahead.
Okay. So you talked about the history about narcissism, and it's been accepted as a psychological term, as a psychological disorder, and I believe it's Narcissistic Personality Disorder, right? Mm-hmm. And you described really well in summary what that is, which is a person who is very concerned with themselves, that's very arrogant, that has a sense of superiority, leadership, authority, and in reality it's a false sense. And it sounds, and you said that we're not going to be here and judge, right? These are titles that we're giving to people, but we don't, or we shouldn't judge, because people who are narcissists because of the life experiences that they have lived. It's a self-defense mechanism to experiencing heartbreak, experiencing abandonment. So because of the lack of love, they want to hang on to things with a sense of authority and control and manipulation, right? Mm-hmm. Empaths, on the other hand, they're not opposites, by the way, but empath is a spiritual or a psychic term. So it's not psychological in any way. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure it's being studied now, but that I know of, psychology has not taken in the term.
Right.
So I said it's a spiritual term used to describe people who, when in reality is highly clairsentient. And I don't know if you ever heard that term before.
I was actually going to ask you about that, because there is a correlation using the spiritual term of empath and a certain set of sensibilities. And I know a lot of people in the spiritual community call them the clairs, right?
Yeah.
So if you could describe to us what some person that is extremely empathic or a highly sensitive person, what are some of these characteristics that they would have?
Okay, so we are all intuitive. We are all psychic. We just receive energy or information in different ways. A highly clairsentient person receives information through their feelings. We've all heard the term clairvoyance, for example. That's a person who clearly sees. You receive information and energy through your visions, through sight, to visual premonitions. Clairsentients feel. They feel physically and they feel emotionally a lot. And that's the word, that's the key word, because we all feel. Highly clairsentient people or empaths feel a lot, feel deeply. And not only do we feel our own emotions and our own physical self, but we feel everything. We feel what we're feeling, plus the energy in the environment, the energy that from other people, the energy from spirit, from the spirit realm too. I told you this was a spiritual term, right? So you can imagine it's extremely overwhelming to be feeling so much. And what it feels like on a day-to-day, for example, you walk into the supermarket and you feel anxious. So that's the feeling that you can probably pick up on and identify. You feel anxiety. But what an empath is feeling and doesn't know, especially if they don't know this information, is that they're actually feeling the emotions of the person who's stressed out because they can't find the item that they're looking for, the person who's stressed out because they're in a hurry, or upset because the cashier is going too slow. And you're feeling all these emotions at once, and it's very overwhelming.
Yep. So if I could interrupt for a second,
Yeah.
I think that is the danger, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that's the danger for a person that is highly empathetic to be in relationship with a person with narcissism or a narcissistic personality disorder. And I think it's because they feel so deeply the other person, they begin, if they're not careful or if they don't know, they begin to lose themselves. So I'm going to backtrack a little back into Greek mythology for a second, because the first time we hear this term, narcissism or narcissus, it is in the book of Ovid, book 3, if anybody's following along and geeking out on Greek mythology right now, like I am. It's in the Metamorphosis, book 3, and it's the story of Narcissus and Echo. So Echo, this beautiful, she's not quite a goddess. She's I'm gonna look that up. She's like a demigod, and she's in the forest, and she falls in love with the beautiful Narcissus. And he, in his cruelty, keeps forcing her to do more and more and more. And she keeps serving and serving and serving and trying to be exactly the person that she feels he needs. And in doing so, she eventually becomes just an echo of herself. So that's a story of Echo and Narcissus. So I think one of the dangers in this dynamic is a loss of self for the person that is highly empathetic.
Yeah, a loss of self, low self-esteem, feeling of being completely lost. If you cannot identify the behavior and get out in time or correct it in time, yes. There's one more twist to this, Kristen, if you allow me to explain.
Sure, please.
So you have, thank you. So you have that overwhelmness of feeling. When it comes to the relationship with a narcissist, you're feeling there, and remember how I said that they are the way they are because of their life experiences. So we are able to feel their sadness. So we are able to understand them, which is also very dangerous.
Very dangerous.
So here's the twist. Empaths or highly clairsentient people are also hold one life purpose in common. And the life purpose of an empath or a highly clairsentient person is to help others, meaning they are the way they are because it's a gift and not a burden. So the overwhelmness is not what you should be focusing on. What you should be focusing is that you can help others. But it becomes dangerous because narcissists need a lot of help. And by the way, narcissists are attracted to empaths by nature of their energy, and empaths, because of their life purpose to help the others, are very attracted to narcissists. Let me help you. Let me love you. Let me save you. These are the natural desires of the empath. But the narcissist needs somebody to drain energy out of. You want to help me? Yes, do it. Help me. And I'll have you right there in control, manipulated. And in the meantime, I'll destroy your self-esteem. So in reality, empaths who are listening, you're never going to help a narcissist by giving, or trying to help. What you're doing is enabling a narcissist.
Right. So I think what you're describing is the codependent relationship between
Yes.
narcissists and the highly empathic person.
Yes.
And so in this relationship, if we can agree that every relationship is in fact an agreement or an exchange, right? Then can you I know you just said it, but I want to clarify what exactly is the exchange here in this type of relationship?
Energy. So what the narcissist is draining out of you is that positive energy. And in return, the empath is drained. Their own energy, which you already mentioned, their own energy will dim. They will get lost. They themselves could feel depression, sadness, feelings of being overwhelmed. So it's an energy exchange.
So the narcissist is getting the energy from the highly empathic person. And the highly empathic person, are they gaining if they're gaining anything at all, are they gaining a sense of self by being in that role of the person that is able to give? In other words, being the good person or the better half, the support system?
I see where you're getting at, and yes, I have felt it too. But it's a false sense of being that good girl that you were taught to be. That's what you're getting at, yes. Right. And I definitely hadn't thought about that, but now that you mention it, yes. But it's a false sense, because what you should be looking out for is for yourself.
Right. Right, which goes kind of counterintuitive to that good girl belief system, right?
Yes, from the way that women are raised. Mm-hmm. Women should be raised to love yourself, take care of yourself, be conscious and aware of your energy, of your health, and then give to others. In reality, women or men, you cannot give what you don't have.
Absolutely. And since we are here speaking born into these Latin American bodies, do you think there is a difference in our cultural upbringing that may lead us to more strongly adhere to this idea of womanhood being the good, supportive, kind of docile one behind the scenes, the constantly giving and selfless person?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to the white American experience or the African experience, but and if we believe that we were born into these bodies for a reason, could part of the lesson be to maybe reaffirm or like untie these lessons we've been taught?
Yes, and I'm trying to think of that because there's a term for it, but putting yourself first is what we should be rethinking and changing, taking care of your energy, and actually creating healthy boundaries which is the way for an empath or a highly clairsentient person to finally break that spell that we are under, to be servant and to give too much.
And it does feel like a spell, because
Yes.
if you've ever been in a highly toxic relationship with, or a victim of narcissistic abuse, I believe that you lose yourself to a point, which you've described, that once you're on the other side of it, you're like, oh my God, where did that 2 years go, 10 years go? Who was that person back there?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I like, I know we're talking a lot about the empath side, how to heal the empath, or how to get the empath to wake up and create positive changes. And it's also because it's harder for a narcissist to identify themselves as a narcissist. If you probably tell a narcissist that they are one, they'll become defensive and they tell you you're the one that has the problem.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Let's speak to that, because I think we're talking about breaking the cycle, right? And being able to get out while we still can. But, and I'll just speak from personal experience, when I felt like I finally stood my ground and set proper boundaries, there is a pushback, and sometimes a very violent pushback that the person on the other side may not be prepared for.
Yes. And okay, so let me speak to that. So if you're listening and you feel that you're an empath, a highly clairsentient person, and that you are stuck in a narcissist empath relationship, your way out of this is creating healthy boundaries. And what are boundaries? Is identifying what your values are. And what is that? How do you feel? So ask yourself, how do I feel about a person who talks to me this way? What do I feel I want out of my relationships? Do I want people to be respectful of me? So make a list of what you like, what you don't like, what you feel. These are your boundaries. And once you have your boundaries identified, guess what? You need to become assertive. So you're in the middle of your life experience with a narcissist, and they call you a name, and that's on your list of, and that should be on your list of no way, not allowed. That's a boundary for sure. But he does it. Then the next step is for you to become assertive. Do not speak to me that way. I actually should probably be stronger than this.
I'm not very good at it. But please don't speak to me that way.
It's different when you're in the heat of it,
right.
But do not. And by the way, it doesn't need to be mean-spirited in any way. Just speaking your truth, your voice, letting your voice come out. And like you mentioned, that person's going to push back. Why? Because you've been a servant the whole relationship. And this doesn't need to be a romantic relationship. It could be mother-child, like you said. It could be friendships. It could be people who you work with. So you're going to speak up and be assertive. You're going to watch the pushback. Before you start practicing this, give yourself, and here's where the magic is, consequences. I will give this person 3 tries, and if by the 3rd time they do not correct the behavior, the consequence is blank. And know that sometimes the consequence is creating distance.
And if I could just ask one question.
Yeah.
Sometimes in this dynamic, like you mentioned, you're losing sense of self. If you're in a place where you feel very little self-worth, I find it difficult to then find the energy to be assertive and then stick to your guns. Can you just speak for a moment on how you develop that? Because I think that's maybe very difficult for some people.
Okay, so that's a tough one. Through a lot of self-search, and that's why I said first you need to identify what your values are, and hold the intention to finally break free from the cycle. And at first, like we said, the voice may not come out strong enough, but you're giving people 3 tries, you know,
Right.
you're giving people enough time to adjust to this new you. So getting really in touch with who you really are, who you want to be, how you want to carry yourself, and then practicing things like meditation, things like yoga. It's a lot of inner work, so that will help a lot. But really, getting in touch with what your values are and then practicing.
I believe you're speaking to living in integrity, correct? Living
Yes.
in adherence to your highest values.
Yes. Yes. And that's of the throat chakra, as you know.
But first, we need to know what those are.
Yeah. So it's letting your voice out, and your voice should be speaking of who you are, who you really are. First comes the identifying who am I, and thus identifying what your values are, and then practicing living who you are. And in this type, or in this example, is through expression. Practice, practice. You can do it.
And even when you speak and you're speaking assertively and you're speaking in your values, there's still a chance that not only you'll definitely get some kickback, but there's other times that I've seen, not only in my own life, but seeing other people, that the person with potentially narcissistic disorder will not accept your reality of the world and continue to live as if you never said anything.
Yes. And that's why I said you have to have thought of what the consequences are going to be. And a lot of the times, the consequence is distance, either by ending the relationship or temporarily finding distance between you and your family, or looking for a new job if it's your relationship with people at work. So distance. And it could be, like I mentioned, temporary distance. And then let's give this a try again. Let's see if you learn your lesson, because this is the new me. Or permanent distance. And if it's somebody who is narcissistic and in denial of what they are, maybe permanent distance, leaving the relationship may be the answer.
Yes.
But going through with your consequences.
Yeah, I mean, we're speaking it out now, but I just like to acknowledge the weight of what you just said and how difficult it might be for some people to even step one, acknowledge that they're in this kind of dynamic.
And take it step by step. You know, first is the awareness and the realization of I may be highly clairsentient. When I go to a concert, I feel anxious. When I when I go to family reunions or Thanksgiving dinner, it feels very overwhelming to me. And then identifying who are the narcissists in your relationships, and then identifying what your values are, and then getting the courage to be assertive and to create boundaries. So very easily said, and at first very hard to practice. But I don't know if it's your experience, Kristen, but for me, my realization was quite a few years ago. But today is a lot easier.
Yes.
To be assertive.
Yes.
So it's something that with practice you become better and better at. I do have an issue, or it's harder for me when it comes to, let's say, family, like my immediate family. Like if my mom asks me to do something and my list of things to do is long, I still kind of squeeze her in and prioritize her things. And that's when I'm like, oh, yes, remember to say no.
Right.
Oh, by the way, learn to say no, empaths. Learn to say no. That's part of being assertive too.
And I think I can only speak to my own experience, but the whole saying no thing might be easier. Like for me, it's much easier in one part of my life than it is for another, or with certain people. I'm very good at saying no in business. I'm like, no, go. I don't need to do that. But the second a relationship feels more intimate to me, then it takes more for me to really say no,
Yeah.
or with certain people.
Yeah.
And I think we also need to acknowledge the time, because I think, at least I like to think, that I'm going to have this realization and immediately I'm going to see results and be a miraculously new, emboldened and empowered woman. But I think it's healthy to remind myself that this is a process, and it's not just going to be like from one day to another that this problem will be solved.
Yep, that's right. It takes practice. So, and this is what I teach my students too. So this is knowledge. We just gave you knowledge. Knowledge becomes wisdom when you start to practice what you know. It's
Can
just
you
a
repeat
matter of
that?
practice.
Knowledge becomes wisdom.
When you practice what you know.
Right. Very true. So I'd like to step back a second.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to know where so we have the highly empathic person and we have the person with narcissism. Is it true to say that they are both operating from a place of loss and scarcity?
Yes.
Can you speak to that?
Yes. Yes. And it's for both lack of self-love. Okay. So it's different. The narcissist would be lack of self-love because of the life experiences they've had. And then for an empath is because of that feeling or because of that feeling too much, and their calling of their life purpose to help. And we empaths put ourselves at the bottom of the priority list and put that life purpose without even knowing ahead of ourselves. But it's for both types of people, it is lack of self-love.
Interesting. I didn't see it that way. Although I did think that the highly empathic person is looking to fix all the time.
Well, that's the life purpose.
Right.
Putting that before loving themselves or taking care of themselves first.
Do you think for the highly empathetic person, there's also a sense, kind of like, and I guess the closest thing comes as like an imposter syndrome, like I should be so good, but like their ideal self and what they think they are right now is kind of, there's some space between. So maybe there's some self-doubt about how good they are, not to use that word, but about how much they're living into this life purpose or their ideal self.
What do you mean? I think I lost you.
Maybe it's just me, but it feels as though some highly sensitive people or empathetic people have a self-ideal or a person they would like to be, or a standard of being, that they feel being good, right?
Yeah.
And helpful and being the one that fixes everything. And then when they don't meet that standard, or they judge themselves for being not close enough to that ideal, they lose some self-worth.
Yeah. Yes, and hopefully they come out of it. And so I get a lot of clients with this kind of behavior too, and it's what I call the earth angels, and I tell people, you are a human being. You are not an angel. You're not here to be an angel. And that's also a huge misconception in the spiritual realm, that to be good and help. You are a human being, and who comes first is yourself. You cannot give what you don't have. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's that period of time where it hits or affects how you feel about yourself, or a sense of failure in a way.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for validating me.
No.
I'm gonna go back into the definitions because I love definitions, and secondly, because I came across, I like you, I hate the definitions I find for empaths or empathy, but there was a spin that I found that might be helpful to someone, so I would just like to read. This is from the Britannica, and it says narcissism. In Freudian psychiatry and psychoanalysis, the term narcissism denotes an excessive degree of self-esteem or self-involvement, a condition that is usually a form of emotional immaturity. So I think that speaks to what you said. It was an effect of their life experience. Something happened maybe in their younger years that kind of stunted them in that developmental stage of me first, or it was a self-defense mechanism. I'm just reiterating what you said. Hopefully it forced them into this space that in order to protect myself, I must think of me first always. Correct? Yeah. All right. So we're on the same page. And then the empathy one I found very interesting. This is from Merriam-Webster. The first part, I think, is common. The second part is what intrigues me. The first says the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experience of another, of either the past or present, without having the feelings, thoughts, and experience fully communicated in an objectively explicit manner.
Wow.
Right? So almost no boundaries, right? Falling into somebody else's life experience and not being able to distinguish where you start and they start, or you end and they end. But here's what I found it perked my interest. The second definition is the empath, the imaginative projection of a subjective state into an object, so the object appears to be infused with it. So I think what it's saying is that there's an aspect of a highly sensitive person that has a desire to project their image of the person into the person.
That's very interesting, because I, being one myself, I can identify with that.
I used to say it was like rose-colored glasses, right? I only saw the best of this person.
Yeah.
Right? This person could be hurling insults at me and be like, but they're so kind to the dog,
Yeah.
So it's our own kind of psychosis, our projection, which could be really beautiful, I think, when you do the work you do, or do the work I do, which is to see the best in people and help them bring that out. I think it's destructive, like you said, or dangerous when you allow it to just be sucked out of you, when you're just projecting this beautiful image on a person so that they can take more from you.
Yes.
Another definition. So this is really interesting. I'd like to speak to this. So this is from the Online Etymology Dictionary, which I am a big fan of, if you like words. It says, empathy was first seen as a term from a theory of art appreciation that maintains appreciation depends on the viewer's ability, again, to project his personality into the viewed object.
So you see, it starts talking about manipulation too, or control too. Very interesting. And I see it.
Right. So I think it's a way to, like, we have to, I believe healing, we have to take responsibility as well. So if we're saying we're highly empathetic people, then I believe, using these definitions, what we also have to take responsibility for is our own actions, which is projecting an image onto another person that may not actually exist.
Trying to be controlling and manipulative in a different way, but yes. Yeah. A narcissist does not want help, not the help that you want to give. You want your energy. And you cannot force them into being who you want them to be.
Exactly. Amen to that. Empaths around the world, take that in. You cannot change a person into who you want them to be.
No.
In any spectrum of life.
Yeah. But narcissists want help. They first have to realize that they are one. They have to get serious in wanting change, and they need to go get professional help. So including energy healings, yoga, going to see a counselor or psychiatrist or psychologist. But a girlfriend cannot cure a narcissist. A sister or brother cannot cure a narcissist. Your coworker cannot cure a coworker narcissist. So it has to be done by somebody else, somebody out of the relationship.
And I've actually read it's one of the most difficult psychological disorders to try to improve.
Yeah.
Why do you think that
denial,
is?
the denial of it. The denial. It's very hard for a narcissist to see there's something wrong with themselves, and they will always turn it around and blame you or whoever it is that is accusing them of being wrong because of this and this and that. The denial.
Because in a way, it's a death, right? It's a denial of their whole belief system in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. And what they've worked so hard to portray, which is a sense of authority and leadership, a big ego, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So going back 1 second, we can't change the narcissist, not ourselves, unless we are professional psychoanalysts that have a lot of time on our hands and are being paid to do so.
Yeah.
But I'd like for you to describe, I want you to think of a very specific example of how an empath thinks they are helping, but are actually not.
Specific example? I'm
well, like a
horrible
made-up
examples,
example.
Kristen.
Not Sally down the street was doing.
No, I can't think of specific examples. I'm terrible at that. But it's that sense of I will save you, I will heal you. On a day-to-day way, in a day-to-day basis, it will look like, by the way, an empath is able to feel the narcissist. We're able to tap into beyond the made up big ego that they portray, right? So we know that they need saved, or we can sense that they need to be saved, that they need to be healed. So the narcissist uses that. So the narcissist is real with the empath. So they'll tell you their life stories. When I was little, I experienced this. And here you are wanting to cuddle them in. Oh, I'm so sorry for what you lived through. So that's, the kind of language or the kind of activity that happens between an empath and a narcissist.
And I think you just hit the key as to the shame and guilt that comes after you've broken or gotten out of a toxic narcissistic relationship. There, at least in my own experience and of people I've spoken to, there seems to be a lot of guilt and shame after the fact, because I think is what you said, you're able to see exactly what they're energetically feeling, or feel what they are feeling or have gone through. And in a way, by breaking this relationship, you now feel like you're almost doing a disservice to them, or you should have done more, or you're ashamed that you failed in your mission somehow to help this person.
You failed at your life purpose, whether you are aware of what your life purpose is or not, but you feel it, you sense it. You failed to be that good person that you set yourself up to be. You failed to heal them, fix them, and save them. And not only do you feel this way, but you have that narcissistic person telling you that you failed, you abandoned them. So that shame and guilt is being, and this is, by the way, emotional and verbal abuse. Okay, so you're being reminded that you failed, you did this, you are the bad one. But no, guys, you should come first. Your health comes first. Relationships should be easy. should be happy, should be loving. And since we're empaths, let's talk about feelings. Relationships should feel good.
I always say, and this is after many toxic relationships and after meeting my husband now, I finally was able to say, love should feel like freedom.
Yeah.
Whereas if you asked me 10 years ago, I would have said, no, love is a sacrifice,
No,
kill me on the
right.
pyre,
No.
and absolutely wrong, right?
Yeah.
But it is what we're taught. We're being reminded in movies. That's what it is. We're like, since Shakespearean times, Romeo and Juliet, kill yourself for love and everything's going to be okay. But when we're actually in a healthy, loving relationship, then you feel free.
You feel free and you feel balanced. The love that you give, you're actually receiving it back.
Yes.
Balance is everything. If the love, the giving and receiving is not balanced, it's not going to work out.
Yeah. So
And
why
that freedom, sorry,
No,
that
go,
freedom
go,
that
go.
you speak of, by the way, and this is how I define soulmates. I don't like any titles, by the way, but it's how we are able to communicate with each other so that we understand each other. So that soulmate of yours, it shouldn't be because you, it's, what is it that we usually define them as? You fall in love and it's who you're attracted to. No, it should be the person who supports you in who you are. So it allows you to be free and supports you on your life purpose, whether you know it or not, or whether they know it or not. And you are supposed to be that person to them.
Right.
That is love. That is soulmates.
Agreed. I also, when we meet this person, or we in a loving relationship, maybe it's not a loving relationship, maybe it's you find the perfect job or whatever it is, there's still some like post-traumatic stress disorder that comes from having lived through this type of toxic relationship. Is it a lifelong process of healing? Or do you think we eventually get to a point where like, oh my God, I'm finally free. I could like live out my life without having to second guess myself or fall into these past versions of myself?
Healing comes depending on how much you've worked on your healing. And yes, there is that sense of PTSD, and you'll heal when you are ready to. And you could decide at any moment, by the way, my intention is to heal or to begin healing. The problem with the empath is that it's in our nature to want to have this unhealthy behavior. So you're going to have to be really strong with yourself. So it reminds you constantly of the consequences of not putting yourself first, of allowing others to drain your energy. And now that I mentioned that, let me just mention this. It's not, empaths not only have unhealthy relationships with narcissists, but with a bunch of other people who drain energy, for example, energy vampires. And I'm sure you'll probably talk about that one day.
Yeah, that's a whole other show.
That's a whole other subject. But just people in general who like to take advantage of people who give and give and give. But yeah, healing comes with time. You have to intend to heal. You have to work on it. And there will be time to time where you'll be reminded of the time that you were not putting yourself in first. But that reminder should keep you also healthy in the future.
Yeah. So if we think of this, if we can come into agreement that we're born into this life and we're in this earth school, in this dynamic, what is the lesson learned for each person?
Self-love.
Self-love. Which is huge. Do you think it's huge for all empaths is that a big life lesson for all people that are highly empathetic?
Yes, that is the main lesson for the empath. Self-love, putting yourself first. You cannot give what you don't have. I'll keep repeating it so it sinks
No,
in.
good. Keep honing
Because
it.
that's the main lesson here.
And it's achievable for both people.
Yeah, yes. Healing is achievable, and so is living out your life in a healthy way. You'll find, like we mentioned before, that you may have some weaknesses to certain people, but then you can remind yourself to say no or to be more assertive. You don't have to be perfect, but you can conquer these things and you can learn your life lessons.
I think what you just said there is important. There's a need for continuously reminding yourself of how much you love yourself. And it's a kind of a radical self-love. I think what you're saying is you have to, or maybe I'm putting words in your mouth and you could tell me that too. But I think what you're saying is that you have to love even the aspects of yourself that you see as imperfect.
Well, yeah, that comes into like that. That's also true. But yes, I'm not saying no.
No,
but what I also meant is putting yourself first.
Yeah.
Your health, your happiness, your self-esteem is more important than others. Because you cannot give to others what you don't have.
And then how do we help the world if we have nothing to give? Right?
Yeah. How do we live out our life purpose?
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you'd like to say? I was planning on talking for 30 minutes and we went for an hour. So
I love talking to you, Kristen.
Thank you. Me too. We could probably go for another hour.
Forever. Don't get me started because I don't know how to stop.
That's okay. We'll do a part 2 soon.
Yeah.
We'll go into energy vampires and the whole thing. But I was wondering is there anything that we maybe didn't touch on that you think is valuable for people listening to know?
I think we said it all. I mean, there are other things that we can mention, like how do you help an empath who is, for example, to use the same example that I said, to go shopping, if you're feeling overwhelmed, picking up all these external energies that are not. So how do you fix that, or how you make that better? Well, would you like me to go into it?
Yes, please.
So I think I could do it quickly. So first off is becoming aware of what your energy is. So how do I feel today? Today I actually feel happy. And if you don't, by the way, go do something to make yourself feel happy. So becoming aware of your energy. And then, so if today I'm feeling happy and I went shopping and all of a sudden I feel anxious or sad or angry or overwhelmed, becoming aware of when your energy shifts and then asking yourself, why did it shift? Why am I upset? Did I experience something that made me upset, or does it make no sense? Because it's then and there that you've picked up somebody else's energy. So starting to become aware of when you are picking up others' energy or the environment's energy. So if you walk into a room and it all of a sudden feels tense, it may be because the people in the room don't like each other, or they just had an argument. I think we've all felt that.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've all, but I definitely have, because I'm an empath. So identifying where your energy is and when it shifts, so that you understand that you are not actually upset, or that the anxiety is not really yours. And then intending to release other people's or the environment's energy. Releasing energy that's not yours is a great exercise for, and I don't know if you want me to go into it, and I could try to be quick about it.
Sure.
So the energy that belongs to us, that is the energy of my personal energy, actually, if you could see it, if you could see human auras, and by the way, it's very easy to do, you will see that it ends right at an arm's length. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on what your energy field is at the moment, but it's about that long, and it's all around you. And this is what I call, and other people call, the bubble, or your bubble. And if you ever had somebody stand too close to you or walk up to you and stand too close to you, you feel that it feels uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll say, step away from my bubble, or just get out of my personal space. And that's actually an clairsentient feeling of energy. Somebody came into my personal energy. So what you can do to protect this thing that is yours, your energy, is to visualize yourself in a bubble. The bubble already exists, is your energy, but you're going to use visualization to make it strong, to seal it, and so that other people's energy bounces off of it. So that's an exercise that you can do, and with practice, you can get really good at it. You're about to walk into Publix, put your bubble on. So visualize yourself inside a bubble.
I actually do that often in the mornings, but since I'm a more kinetic person, I actually do movement. I like create my bubble with my hands or with smoke, because I have to be moving to be able to feel it. Also visualization, but I feel for people that are more movement oriented, I think it really helps to be able to like build it.
Okay, that's great. And yes, I noticed that my students create different ways that work for them, you know? So that's great. That's actually great. Thanks for sharing that, because I could start teaching that too. Another thing that's very important for empaths is to recharge your energy. And how do empaths recharge? Is by spending time alone. Why? Because you don't have anybody else's energy to deal with, and that's when you can recharge. And notice how we talked about codependency, and this also sounds a lot like introverts. And it's my belief that all introverts are actually empaths. Empaths, or highly clairsentient or highly claircognizant, which is another way to receive energy. That's for a different show too.
And I also like the definition of introvert as a person, because I never saw myself as an introvert because I can be highly social. But I think when it was described to me as a person that needs time by themselves, or after a certain amount of social time, then needs to remove themselves, then I was like, oh, okay, maybe I am an introvert.
Right. And introverts are not necessarily antisocial. They just like their kind of people, or they choose people by energy. Whose energy do I like, whether they're aware of it or not?
Yeah, I think a good way to think about it is it's not the person at a party that's working the room and talking to everybody. It's usually the person standing in the corner talking to one person for the whole hour.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we search for people by energy. Whose energy do I like? Whether they know it or not, that's what they're doing.
Right.
Yeah, so spending time alone will recharge your energy, will help you feel. So if you ever feel overwhelmed, anxious, you're feeling too much, that's what you go do to recharge, to feel better. Spending time in nature. We could get into crystals too. I could talk forever.
No, we are all day. But we both have children to get to. So.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share before we start to wrap it up?
No. I think we said a lot. And I'm just thankful that you have me here and I get the opportunity to speak about this, because there is healing in receiving this information, as
Absolutely.
you know.
I think there's also healing in just being able to name it. I think when we hear another person speak to our experience, it could be profoundly healing, because we don't feel so alone in the situation.
Yeah.
Especially when we're in a place, I have a feeling that most of the people watching this consider themselves empaths. So I'll speak to them in saying that sometimes when we're in the position that feels like the lesser of the two, or we're feeling like we don't have a lot of self-worth, somebody just speaking the words to us and validating our feelings and our experience can just lift us up, and it's a healing experience in that. So I thank you for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom, and for taking this time with us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Now for the audience, I'd just like to say that you're not the only empath in the room. So if you can close your eyes and think of another person that would be so healed by receiving this broadcast this knowledge, this wisdom that Rackie shared. Close your eyes, and if you see them, just send them the link to this video. And if that person is you, then take in this information, and we are so grateful you are here. You can find this video, the replay, here on Crowdcast. You can find it on YouTube as soon as I upload it. And we're on Spotify and SoundCloud and iTunes. So get it however you like. We're so grateful you're here, and I am so privileged to have Rackie on the show. Thank you so much. I can't wait till we talk again. This was great.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Have a beautiful day and get back to your baby.
Yes, you too. Bye.
Bye.